Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. Of course, the UN chief's visit is concluded, and amid the flood-ravaged Pakistan that he's seen, he spoke about the fact that he's seen great heights of human endurance and heroism among climate change damage in Pakistan. Also, the fact that the great resilience of people that he's seen as they rally behind those suffering in flood damage in Pakistan. Of course, we'll be talking about some of the things that the UN Secretary General spoke about, what his assessment of overall situation has been. Of course, he said that $30 billion, roughly an estimate of the damage that has occurred as far as the flood damage is concerned. We'll be talking more about that. We'll also be talking, of course, about what we can expect, how we move on from rescue and relief to rehabilitation, and what we can expect in terms of the aid that is coming forward from the world, from friendly countries, from organizations like the UN. All of that today. We'll also be talking later about Quaid-e-Azam's vision of Pakistan, especially today, how he saw Pakistan and where we are today. Moving on, before we go on and talk about flood damage, climate damage, and Pakistan's suffering today, our anchor Sana Maqbool spoke with Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and we'd like to take you to that interview.
The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is with us today. He has been on a two-day visit to Pakistan, on a solidarity visit to the country. Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary General, for being in the country. And of course, you witnessed the various flood-affected areas, met with the flood victims and the respondents today. And there were some very heartwarming stories also that we all heard. When we take a look at the kind of devastation that has occurred, of course, it's quite different in terms of when you actually witness it. Can you explain to us the way that you have observed what has happened in this country, the scale of this devastation, and hopefully try and translate that for the people and the countries who haven't gotten a chance to see this in person, so that they can understand the scale of this devastation?
Well, I have no words to describe what I've seen today. A flooded area that is 3 times the total area of my country, Portugal. I mean, this is unimaginable. We are seeing an unprecedented natural disaster clearly caused by climate change. And this visit today, I mean, we can talk about the numbers of people died, the areas covered, the number of livestock, but this is essentially about people that suffer enormously. People that have lost their houses, the crops, the cattle, their livelihoods. Some of them have to pay the loans that they had to ask for in order to plant what is now lost. So it is a human tragedy of an enormous dimension. And at the same time, I was deeply moved and inspired when I heard the stories of women and men that have abandoned their property, not take care of their own things in order to be able to go and rescue the neighbors and bring the neighbors to safety.
Right.
I mean, these examples of generosity, of solidarity, and of courage make me feel that the world has an enormous responsibility today. And that responsibility is to massively support Pakistan, because the dimension is enormous, and Pakistan has not the resources to be able to support their people and to be able to recover the economy and the country. And not only support Pakistan, but also I think we need to stop this war on nature. Nature is striking back with devastating consequences. It's Pakistan, it's Chad, it's the Horn of Africa, with drought. The victims are not those that pollute. The victims are those that are in the places less protected against the devastating impacts of climate change. So international solidarity is not a matter of generosity, it's a matter of justice.
Absolutely, and you've been saying that, and it's important for, of course, the countries responsible for most of the global carbon emissions to understand that, and the kind of spirit of sacrifice that we've seen today to replicate that. When we take a look at what the UN can do and how the international partners can talk about the conversation regarding climate change and also incorporate loss and damage into it, there is, of course, a lot of effort in terms of raising this issue. But the kind of urgency that is needed or the kind of tangible actions that are needed, we still haven't been seeing that. How can you, or the platform of the UN, help people and countries like ours to ensure that there is action regarding climate change?
Well, first of all, we must raise awareness. We must speak loudly about this tragedy and say that those that are responsible for the climate change that is happening have a responsibility to support the Pakistani people in this situation. But at the same time, it is crucial that financial support to developing countries in relation to adaptation and resilience increases substantially. There was finally a promise of $40 billion per year,
yes,
but it's not yet clear if that will happen, and that is obviously not sufficient. We estimate the need of about $300 billion per year for adaptation of the developing countries. Of course, there is a possibility to have private investments, to mobilize other resources, but it's clear that there is a strong responsibility for that. And then there is the question of loss and damage that is foreseen in the Paris Agreement, and until now there was no progress in a serious discussion on that issue. I know it's a difficult issue, I know it will not be solved from one moment to the other, but I hope that in Cairo there is real progress, substantial progress in the discussion on loss and damage.
Right. Thank you very much, Secretary General, for joining us today.
Welcome back. That was Secretary General Antonio Guterres talking to Sana, and I want to move on. I have with me Mohammed Abdullah Diol. Thank you for being with us. We also have with us Naela Chohan, who's a former ambassador. Thank you for joining us. Abdullah, I hope you heard what the UN Secretary General was saying. And, you know, essentially what he said is that, of course, one, that he's very impressed with the kind of resilience that he's seen our people show. Also, the catastrophic damage is certainly, you know, unparalleled. He hasn't seen that kind of damage that he saw in this visit. He said he has no words. And other than that, the fact that responsible nations, those responsible for these kind of carbon emissions, must take responsibility. I think those two things are very important. One can't disagree with that. Do you think that that will happen? Do you think that they will own up, they will take responsibility?
I think he's absolutely right. But there are a few other things that we should take into account when addressing this issue. For example, a normal human carbon dioxide emission per year is 4 tons, and we're a population of 220 million. So when we look at the carbon footprint, then I think as a human being we have a lot of carbon footprint. But when we talk about just a country, then of course it's less than one person. The example is that if we want to import 1 million cars from Japan, let's say, and their industry releases a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's actually because of us, because we are the end users and we are the ones that are asking them to build those things. So of course, in one way or the other, we also have to look at this, that if we can manufacture our own items instead of importing by using renewable energy. And also I think where we are standing or located, we are next to India and China, which are the two mega industries at the moment, and they're rapidly progressing in industrialization, and their carbon dioxide emission has direct impact on us because we are next to them, and they're the Himalayas and Karakorams. So we also have to talk with our neighbors first of all, instead of the Western countries. But of course, Western countries at least should, instead of giving us flood relief grant, but maybe they can invest as a flood research grant. I heard on the first day when Mr. UN Secretary came, he said, instead of giving that to Pakistan, invest in Pakistan. So I think that would be a good way to just return it to Pakistan. And if they are responsible, then it will be helpful for their continent and countries too, because this year there was a lot of heat wave.
I want to talk about, other issues like Paris Agreement that we've seen, the Green Climate Fund, all of those things are important, and whether developed nations are owning up to their end of the bargain, their end of the agreement when we talk about these major, agreements between international countries. Let me go to first Naela Chohan. Naela, as far as the conversation between Antonio Guterres and Sana, I hope you heard what he said. There's nothing, surprising in what he said. We have now been looking at the damage the floods have wrought for a while now. In your opinion, as far as owning up is concerned by the developed nations, do you see it happening? I keep saying this because, he also talked about this, that we should be raising awareness, and that is something that, Pakistan should constantly strive towards. We are also, of course, doing that. But in terms of the overall international scenario at this time, and in terms of the response that we've seen, what is your estimate of whether these nations will come forward and help us in trying to eliminate, one, the damage, and of course for the future also?
Thank you so much for inviting me to your program. The question you have asked is a very important question. There is no simple answer to it. As you know, this conversation between the global north and global south has been going on for a few decades now.
Right.
But now those who were, climate change deniers also have started realizing that it is not a fantasy, it's a reality. And the devastation that has been caused in Pakistan, Abdullah was talking to regional countries. The question is not about region, because it's about G20. India and China both are G20 countries. So we have to be talking to global north. And there has been a talk, even in COP26, about a broad program of climate reparations. There has been a talk on all these issues that the Secretary General was talking about. And now the COP27 is a few months away from today. I think it's a very important turning point for the whole world, because Pakistan, of course, we are suffering from inundation and terrible, like I was saying the other day, 33 million people have been displaced internally. It is 6 times the number of people displaced in Ukraine. But you see a lot of coverage in Western media about Ukraine, nothing about Pakistan. I think we should continue with our debate. In COP27, there will be more unanimity amongst the global south. And of course, there will be many global north which will also realize that it's the same planet we are living in. The important point that we need to look at is
Naila,
that
also you said that it's the same planet, and also, I think it's a post-COVID world, and that at least underlines the fact that the concept of isolation, so to speak, it at least told us that it's not possible for the world to isolate itself completely. We saw what happened with COVID. We saw, the way that it gripped the entire world. And it's not going to change whether you're a developed nation or you're an underdeveloped, or you're a developing nation. All of those realities have now come in our face, and for us to dissociate ourselves completely, I don't think it's possible. Do you think that the world, and when you talk about the global north, do you think that nations like China and India are going to take cognizance of that?
Mahrukh, you are very right that no country can consider itself above and away from the rest of the planet. And COVID showed us that everybody is affected. It's not about, that if your house is burnt, mine will be saved. Fire will catch everyone. As far as China is concerned, China has taken a lot of measures. But I think the biggest threat is after the Russo-Ukraine war, that, you know, the oil and gas supplies were affected, and the global north, for their politics against Russia, decided to go back more to coal emissions, which will create more devastation. So for their politics, they are willing to put the whole world to danger instead of taking their responsibility. In COP26, they had agreed to a global fund of 101 billion euros or 100, billion dollars, and very little has come into that fund. I was giving the example of EU. It is 23%, polluter of the world pollution, and they have only contributed 1.8 million for the victims of climate change, and they have spent, Mahrukh, can you imagine, $34.4 billion to cordon their borders, preventing from, climate refugees to come to the West.
Okay.
So you can imagine the attitude. They think by cordoning, they can be in a glass house and it won't affect them. It will affect them, and it is. As you can see nowadays, their rivers are drying up. They are also getting affected. So I don't think they can deny, their responsibility for very long.
Right. Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Dr. Ghulam Rasool. Can you hear me, Doctor? Doctor, can you hear me? I don't think. Ji, Abdullah, if you heard what Naela said, I think it's extremely surprising, at least for me, to hear what the revelations that she's made in terms of trying to isolate oneself and the way the world is not willing to take responsibility. In your opinion, let's talk about Paris Agreement and the Climate Change Fund. Do you think that the Green Climate Fund, sorry, do you think that those funds will entail other nations to take responsibility or no?
Like Ms. Naela was saying, that this is our planet and we are in this together. So I think we all are at the moment affected by different problems. US is still recovering from post-COVID economical crisis. And as you mentioned, there's a war going on in Europe and Russia, Ukraine. And they are facing a lot of inflation and gas prices, and Russia just cut down the gas supply for Germany. So I think there are already a lot of financial issues going on, and now with the death of Queen, they have to print new currency notes, passports, and all those things. It's going to cost them a lot of money. So I think maybe at the moment they're not in hand of cash. No, I'm just saying, like, maybe they're not in the cash. To have them for us at the moment, and it's the 25th flood in 75 years.
They don't have the cash for us, you're saying?
Probably they're having their financial issues at the moment, and maybe that's why they are not doing it. But I think it's this 25th flood in 75 years, and in 2010 we were underwater 1/3, just like we are now. So we had 12 years to prepare. And even if they give us cash, what are we going to do? I think we have to take our own responsibility as well. Let's do something with the research. Let's say our government said that it's $30 billion of loss. Okay, they give us 30 billion this year. What if, the question is, what if it comes next year? If the girl's going to give us 30 billion again, and what if it comes after 5 years? We're going to ask for 50 billion at that time. We cannot give our fate in others' hands. And like she said, this is planet for all of us, and rightfully she said it's 23% of the emission, but we are the end users. So if Global North is not listening to Global South, we can boycott their industry, and we can have our own clean and green energy and industry. Maybe that way we can also start trade. Maybe other countries will start look up to Pakistan.
So you're saying that we need to, so maybe we need to channel our funds in that quarter instead of just trying to mitigate the loss and the damage.
Yes, we should also look for the future, for the research, for the modeling, because Europe has secured itself. And of course, everybody first secure its own house. They have climate modeling for the next 100, 200 years, flood modeling, groundwater modeling, and we are lacking in all those technologies. So let's, for example, if there is a disease, you just don't give a patient all the time the same tablet like Panadol just to lower down its fever. You find the cure for it so that it doesn't happen. I agree with her about the carbon emission and global north not doing so much, but maybe we can calculate our own carbon footprints. We can try to boycott. Of course, it's not easy, and maybe that way we can also come up with our own industry, like China and India is a G20 member and they have their own country.
In terms of our clout in the world, let me come back to you. Naela, in terms of our own clout, can you hear me, Naela?
Gigi, I can hear you.
Naela, in terms of our clout in the world, of course, you know, we are working within our own limitations, our financial limitations, our limitation, you know, vis-a-vis our own tier, our own importance, our political importance in the world, our, you know, economic importance. All of those things are unfortunately realities along with the kind of damage that we've suffered. Do you think in the wake of that kind of scenario, what, you know, Abdullah says, there can't be two opinions on the fact that we need to perhaps invest in research, we need to invest in, you know, trying to safeguard ourselves for the future. And of course, the world has a responsibility, which is what the UN Secretary General also said. He said that those responsible need to own up. And we keep saying that. But for us to first take, you know, the fact that, you know, to safeguard ourselves for the future should be on top of the agenda. And for that, whether we need to, you know, invest in research, whether we need to invest in other mechanisms to safeguard ourselves, that should take priority, along, of course, with trying to, you know, mitigate the losses, relief and rescue. Those are important also.
Mahrukh, I think we are putting the cart before the horse.
Okay.
Because it's not about Pakistan's clout. As I said, it is, you know, a large number of countries are part of Global South. And smaller, I mean, number of countries are part of Global North. Now, you are talking about investing in research. Your people are dying, and you will be giving money to these experts coming from Europe and America and put all their money back to them. That's a typical UN game. And I think it's enough. I mean, not even UN game, it's a Western game. So if a UNESCO representative is talking about it, I can understand that. But for the people of Pakistan who are dying right now, I think we have to have a more proactive approach. And I think in COP27, we will stand together. We should also, like you mentioned about COVID, in the beginning, you know, how many people died because of the patent? Because the Western countries that had done research were not sharing the vaccination with the rest of the world. So that was also a kind of an apartheid. Now, if you're coming down to the climate change, I think the first thing we talk about is patent-free sharing of green technology. And Secretary General also said that, you know, debt swap, that the money that IMF has given you, the World Bank has given you, you are under debt. By paying your debts, you have no money left for the development of your country and your infrastructure. You need that money, so debt swap should be a very important negotiation point for us. And we should say that if we stop paying IMF and World Bank all the money, we can use the same amount for the development of our people. The Secretary General also very categorically, and I agree with him, that the international financial institutions are also very, I don't want to use all those negative words, but there is a lot of politics there, and there is no transparency there. So Bretton Woods system is now obsolete. We should have a new structure, and those funds should be coming. And it's not that we don't have clout or our economy is down. Look at Sri Lanka. What was their problem? They tried to use organic fertilizers to be eco-friendly in their exports, the conditionalities that the West had put on their exports. Consequently, they had devastation and people are dying right now in Sri Lanka. So the politics of the global north has to be taken in greater detail. And we should stand together. We should fight for debt cancellation. We should talk about wealth taxation in the north. And we should talk about patent-free sharing of green technology. We should talk about reforms of the international financial institutions. And for Pakistan, our immediate need is debt cancellation. And we should also look for a damaged financial facility from the West, which has to fulfill its obligation. Like Secretary General just said, it's not about charity or donations. It's about justice. It's climate justice that we are talking about. And that should be the topic.
I'm going to go to Abdullah. I can see that I don't think he completely agrees, but I have to say
I know he doesn't.
that I agree. But I have to say that I agree with what you're saying when you say that it's about climate justice. I think that's a very apt term, that it's not about donations, it's not about them doling out, giving us anything that we're not entitled to. And I want to come to that, but Abdullah, I'd like to take your opinion.
Yeah, with all due respect to Ms. Naela, I would like to disagree. And like she said, we must have a proactive approach. So proactive approach is about you are ready beforehand. This is the 25th mega flood in 75 years history. It's like after every 3 years we have a flood. Are we suffering from climate change since independence? In 2010, 2019, 2014, 1992, 2005, 1952, 54, 71, 73. The list goes on. The WAPDA has the entire data.
Okay, so you're saying we're not suffering from climate damage?
There is climate. I'm not saying that it is not. It is. But what I'm saying is that if we are not going to, and with research, I'm not saying that take the money back to them. You think we don't have scientists? We don't have engineers? We have NDMA, Flood Forecasting Department, Federal Flood Commission, Meteorological Department. We have Ministry of Science and Technology, Ministry of Urban Planning. We have IRSA. We have Ministry of Climate Change. We have SPARCO for the satellite data. We have these 9 institutes.
Fair enough. You're saying invest in your own institutions.
My point is,
empower them.
All the time we are just listening about relief work, relief work, relief work. The best relief to the flood victims is that there is no more flood for them anymore. They are flood proof. They are safe. 25th flood in 75 years. Please tell me, do the maths. Why is it all the time? And also,
you don't think we should be talking about debt swap?
No, we should be, but why don't we talk about what to do that it doesn't happen in the future? It's done. Every year we just talk about floods when there are victims and they are dead. Why don't we talk in the dry season? So what I would like to ask, the only thing I would like to put up is that if we are saying the global north is making all the CO2, but they are feeding us. If we're not making our own food, we cannot even make our own common pin, and they're making it. So I think we should also look into ourselves. It's like I want to kill someone, but I don't kill it, and I pay someone to kill it. And that's how I'm killing basically environment. And even if we get all the money, again, we build all those houses and everything that we have to actually.
So
but if without planning and research we do it, they will again be flooded and destroyed, just like they are again flooded for the 25th time. That's my point. Just have a proper planning before we do it.
I don't think there's anything wrong with what you are saying, of course, and I think that Naela will agree with that also. I mean, of course, we should be talking about debt swap. There are no two opinions on that. We should be talking about climate justice. We should be talking about all those things. But along with that, you are saying that basically, Abdullah is saying that we need to invest in our institutions. We need to empower our own institutions to be able to conduct those researches that are required, to be able to take those steps so that we don't the same thing doesn't happen again. We don't have the same kind of catastrophic damage that we are seeing at this time. We need to accept climate damage as a reality, climate change as a reality, and perhaps take it seriously, which we haven't done for a long time now.
Yes, that is basically my point.
Right. Ji, Naela.
Mahrukh, I agree with Abdullah to the point that we have to strengthen our institutions. Yes, we have to. We have to have, mitigation, adaptation, all those things for which technology is required. I was just reading an article the other day, Mahrukh, that Pakistan, again, alhamdulillah, has a success story because we use cell phone to create awareness about steps that the victims have to take when they are in a certain situation. And it has been a big success, just as we succeeded in COVID. So use of technology, yes, we should be doing that. We are doing it. We are trying to do this, but when you see 1/3 of your country underwater, your glaciers are melting. Now, why are they melting? Am I going and cooking there? No. It is the carbon emission, which is coming from the global north. So let's not, minimize the issue. It is a global issue. We have to look at it from global perspective, and we have to stand together with rest of the South to make this awareness to North that they have a responsibility. They have commitments which they have not fulfilled. They need to do it now.
Right. I think I agree with that, of course. Both things, I think, need to happen side by side. We need to, of course, take care of what we can do at our own end, and we also need to ask the world to own up, to take responsibility, essentially, to, help us with what Naela is saying. We can blame ourselves for not being able to safeguard ourselves, but then they also have to take their share of responsibility.
Yes, of course, they should take it, and I think they're taking it. That's why UN Secretary was here. And it shows that. But when I talk with my international colleagues on this, about telling them that 1/3 of my country is underwater, and they come up with this, wasn't it 12 years ago already? So you guys have 12 years to prepare. What did you guys do? And this is a valid question. So I think we should have learned from our past. And of course, our glaciers are melting. That's why I was saying, even if we get all the money, we're not going to put a refrigerator in Himalaya, which is going to freeze them. At the end of the day, we as a human have to calculate our own carbon dioxide footprints, mine, yours, Miss Naela's, everyone's, even if I'm not excreting it or emitting it by myself, but maybe I'm buying those products which are as a result of highly produced carbon dioxide in the environment.
Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for joining us. Mohammed Abdullah Deol, thank you for joining us. Naela Chohan, thank you for being with us on this very important topic.